Hi, my name is Robert Ranitzky, and by popular demand, I would like to show you this little making of on how the GenArt's real intro paper tear effect was achieved. It's not going to be a full tutorial, it's more going to be like a little sneak peek behind the scenes on how I achieved this effect. In case you're not familiar with the effect, let me just quickly play back the intro for you. So this is the paper tear effect, which was done in Cinema 4D and After Effects. Mainly there are a couple of things to watch out, and I will point them out while explaining this. It's been all done within Cinema 4D and After Effects, so there's no video footage in there whatsoever. And let me just dive in straight to the making of how this was done. So one of the key aspects of creating this was taking a look at how paper looks, how real paper looks. So in this case, I took some reference photography from real paper and found out that it's semi-transparent and has a specific look on the edges. This is another picture I took with a 5D Mark II, and I realized that it's not really possible to do that as real, to really film it, because of course it's difficult to guide the paper how it should look and everything. But this was very helpful to find out what look I wanted to achieve. So what I did is I initially scanned sheets of paper. So I took different sheets of paper that I scanned, and if you look closely, you will see that it is very high res. So if some of you out there are still familiar with scanners, remember those are the things that you can open up a lid and you put a paper in there and it will scan it for you. So I guess it's pretty rare these days, but if you look closely, you can see that it's pretty high res. So this will basically give you an alpha matte or a luma matte in this case that you can use to create the edges. So this is the paper, and also I have another one. It's this one here. So it has other sheets as well. And I used different sheets of paper. I think I used inkjet paper because it has this nice little effect here on the edges, and it's also gives this nice look of little fibers coming out of the paper. So make sure you have some good high-res scans of that. I think mine are something around 6,000 times 9,000 pixels. And then you go into Cinema 4D and start building your actual paper. So for that, I'm going to go to Cinema 4D and going to show you how this was set up. As you can see, this is the setup file that I've used, and it's I think it's shot 2, and you can see that the paper is just curling away while the camera is slowly moving. So I've added a little bit of camera movement so it's not so static. But how was this achieved? Well, it's pretty easy, to be honest. It's a plane and a bend effector. So I just used bend to actually bend that plane, and then I've added in HyperNURBS to make it nice and round. So how does the bend work? For that, let me just go to another scene so I can explain it a little bit better. So this is another shot, which is like a close-up, almost like a flyby. And if you watch closely, you see that purple shape here, and the purple shape is actually the bend deformer. The bend deformer will allow you to bend that plane shape. So depending on how you move it, you can animate that property. And you have another set of properties that you can animate. And look at the strength. The strength is at it's almost minus 2,000. So you can define on how tight the bending should be. And if you look around to the edges, you can see this. So it's a very tight bend. Okay. So if we move around, you will see that this will actually give you this bend effect. But you can also play with other aspects of it, like for example the rotation values. You can define on how it should curl up. If I think it's more interesting if it's not parallel, so that's why I use this horizontal value to set it off a little bit. And again, you can play with multiple values to have interesting effects. But I chose these, and I just animated the Z position of the curl. and as soon as you render it, you will see how it looks like. It's rendered with GI, so you can see that it's creating the passes, and will give you the final look quite quickly. So I'm rendering this on my laptop right now. It's a MacBook Pro, but still it gives you quite fast results. And you can also see a second part which makes out this interesting effect is what is behind it. So there's actually no real tear happening. It's just really close on the floor. So if you look up, that's the whole thing. I've used just a little background, and I have patches of texture. So these patches are made up of different paper patches. So I think I have 4 or 5, and just laid them out like carpets, and they intersect each other. And where the background goes away, let me just go up again. You will see that it would reveal a little hole, but then again, this hole is just made out of patches. So I used the torn edges to create the hole in there. So basically, after it will curl up, hang on, I have to choose this one here. So after it curled up, it will reveal what is behind it, and behind it are those patches that I have created. And going back to my second shot, maybe it's worth explaining that this paper section that you can see here is made up of different layers actually. So I have a top layer, I have a layer left and right, and I have an underlying layer. And the underlying layer is just slightly beneath it. So if you look at it, at the values, you can see that they should be. I thought they are. Oh yes, they are. This is the one. So I have multiple layers in there. So one is at minus 0.02 and the other one is at minus 0.01. And I created this to create a little bit more of an interesting effect that will give me a little bit of a shadow, and it will look like the paper is made out of multiple layers. So you basically will get this little shadow here. So this is layer 1 and this is layer 2, which is just slightly under it. And if you're wondering if you can, why don't you see any tear that's already been there? Well, you would technically see it, but because it's so small and so minimal, you actually don't see it. And also you have to make sure, actually you can see it a little bit right here. And actually you have to make sure that you have the positive and the negative. So it looks actually like it's tearing. So all you have to do is just take the negative value. And let me just show you the texture for this real quickly. This is the alpha. So I have some color which is white. I have a crumpled paper texture that is very light, so it's not just flat. But also in the bump map I have a little bit of a texture. But most importantly is the alpha channel. And if you look at the alpha channel, you can see that this is the torn paper that I have added, and this has to match. This has to line up properly with the other paper texture that we have added to this curled up paper tier. So that's the secret of it, basically. It's just animated, very simple. Maybe I can walk you through some of the render settings that I have. There's of course the obvious object buffers that I've created. So in total there are 3 object buffers, so that I can control it better in After Effects. So I think this one was object buffer 1. So it's the curl part. The paper, the background is basically number 2, and number 3 is the background. So I have 3 object buffers. Of course I have the depth channel as well as motion vectors, separate GI and RGB alpha image, and of course global illumination is on. I used the IR still image settings with the diffuse depth of 2, and these are the other settings that I have used for this. It works quite well with these settings, so no problems whatsoever, and it renders quite fast as well. So if I render this, it should go quite quickly. And I've actually rendered this on my Mac Pro, so it was even faster than on a laptop. So the result is quite nice. But of course, it's not finished because we have to comp it and refine it in After Effects to get to the final look. So let me jump to After Effects for this. And in After Effects, this is how the render looks like. So you can see all of those nice fibers. Everything looks quite sexy, but still we're not there where we want to be because we have to add a few things. And one of the problems that I've stumbled upon was that the depth channel was only giving me the depth information from the geometry. It was not giving me depth channel to the fibers, of course, because it's only realizing or rendering the depth information that is coming from actual geometry. But since we have an alpha channel, it didn't work quite right. So what I have created is I have created a fake depth channel. A fake depth channel is something that I use quite often to actually guide the depth of field the way I would like it to have. So what I created is just a white layer, and if I show the mask, I have just a feathered mask, which is roughly the angle that I would like to have the depth. So basically with the depth channel you can control what is in focus and what is not. And to create this, let me just show you what else I have created here. So for now I have a little bit of grain. I use sapphire grain. You can see that it's giving you a little bit of grain, so you get rid of some of the banding. I have used the sapphire vignette effect to add a little bit of vignetting, and I've used curves to just a typical S shape, just to give it a little bit more contrast. The second adjustment layer is a bit more interesting, I think, because I used a 4-color gradient. So I've used the 4-color gradient to have warmish colors here on the left and bluish colors on the right. And those two complementary colors, blue and yellow, so warm and cold colors, look quite nice. So it gives a bit more of a, like it was lighted properly. And I didn't want to use Cinema 4D lights to light it because I wanted to have a bit more control in post-production on how to achieve this effect. But still, you might be wondering, how did I achieve that look of depth of field? So let me just add depth of field to that, and for this I'm gonna go ahead and choose a new adjustment layer and call this depth of field, and I'm gonna choose my favorite plugin, which is from Frischluft, and it's called depth of field. All I have to do now is choose my fake depth layer, choosing layer number 6, which is the fake depth layer, and I'm just going to crank up the value, maybe something like 20, so make it really like it's been photographed by a macro lens with the proper aperture settings and everything. So this gives you this shallow depth of field, and of course you can always go ahead and choose a different depth of field setting. Let's say I choose depth right here. I switch that off again, and you can see that this part is in focus and this is out of focus. Of course it's physically not 100% correct, but I think it works quite nice. So let me just select this as a focus area and hide this again, and you can see that it looks quite nice. Also hiding some of the flaws that we have here, but I think again it works quite nice the way it is. And of course we can go ahead and choose different irises, like 6 facets and just a little bit rounded, and this gives you quite a nice result. The last thing I add usually is a little bit of chromatic aberration. Let me just call that chromatic aberration, and oops, chromatic ABB. Let's just use that. And for this I use the sapphire filter. It's the warp chroma filter. Warp chroma, when you apply it, looks like this, which is really like a look that we don't want. But if we reduce the distance from Z to something like 0.995, we'll get something like this. Maybe we can add a little bit more, 9.2. And this will give you a little bit of chromatic aberration on the edges. So this will give you this red and green shift a red and green blue shift on the edges, then it will just make it slightly more realistic. So if we go through some of the footage here, you will see that it makes it a little bit unsharper, and it just gives you this beautiful look. And actually, let me just choose the different layer order. So maybe I put that on top so that the grain is not blurred as well. So of course the grain has to be on top of the blur, also to avoid banding, and of course naturally it looks more realistic because the grain would be coming from film or from the camera. So this is how this was achieved. And maybe one last note for the ending. I've used null objects and the render tag and the external compositing tag in Cinema 4D to comp in the logo and also actually the color. So if I go into this comp, you can see that I have the camera. And let me go back to Cinema and open up a file for you, which is the last one. So this is the ending shot. It's doing some fancy OpenGL stuff. Let me just do this. Okay, so you can see it will start to pan up and a little bounce. So what I've did is created an external compositing tag on the floor, and since I have render tags on these images or on these objects, this is a perfect hole that I can add in After Effects. So of course if I go back, so this is my camera, this is my null object that I have, so everything works in perspective. I can go ahead and highlight that layer, go to title, and of course I could type something else, like something like Robert's edition. So if I go back, this will be perfectly in place and also move accordingly with the camera. So everything is masked out because it uses the camera. And of course I've used this object pass to mask it out. So there you go, it's perfectly fine. And of course you can also change the paper color if you like, be totally flexible. And actually that's what I did, because if you look back at the trailer, there are two editions, there are basically two flavors. So there's one black flavor that's been edited slightly different and rendering different shots. It's the actual visual effects showreel, and the other one is the motion graphics showreel, which has a few different shots and it uses blue as a color and of course a different title. But this pretty much wraps it up, and hope you like this little making of on how this paper tear effect was done. So thanks for listening, and take care and have fun animating.